This is the Real Estate Rookie show number 4. I'm Ashley Kerr, and I'm here with my co-host Felipe Mejia and his parrot.
Oh my gosh. Why did you have to bring it up right away? You couldn't wait to say that, could you?
The whole recording, chirp, chirp, chirp. I thought it was a smoke detector the whole time that
right?
its battery.
I'm in Florida.
Go ahead, tell the reason.
Look, This is terrible. Okay, guys, I'm in Florida. I'm supposed to be headed back to Nashville soon. I'm at my in-laws' house, and they have a parrot, right? And you can hear it in the background during the whole show, and no one decided to tell me. I've been here for a while, so it's just kind of background noise. I can't even tell. And it's just chirping away the whole time during this conversation.
He doesn't even hear it anymore. He's immune
I
to
don't
hear it.
There was a comment earlier like, oh, what's the beeping? And I was like, oh, the parrot.
Yeah. Well, I had a good laugh over it, so.
No, it was great. It was great. So today we actually have a different type of show. We're actually going to be doing live calls. The video where we are at, or people are asking us questions regarding what we're doing during this Corona time, during the virus, and how we're investing, how we're using, what we know to further our real estate. Are we sitting back? And there's some great questions on there, from wholesaling to Airbnb and everything in between.
I love this show. This was one of my favorites, especially having people call in live and talking with us. That was really cool. I got excited about someone who's starting with the wholesaling, and it was just really inspirational how it didn't work out, but they're still going and doing it. But then we touch about how people are handling tenants who can't afford to pay right now. So I like going over all that stuff. And with people asking these questions, it always makes me think too about, am I doing it the way that I want to do it? And I'm always learning too from everyone. So I thank you to everyone that called in today.
Absolutely. I think there's so much knowledge in today's show because it was live and people were asking questions based on what's going on today. It's changing every 12 hours. Ashley, how are you doing up north? How's everything with you and your family? Is everyone okay?
Yeah, New York State started a pause order where it's not mandatory to shelter in place, but everything that's non-essential has shut down. So I've basically been home in the barn or at my rehab, which there's no one there. But luckily the hardware stores are still open, but we did try to stock up on stuff so that we don't have to go out as much. What about in Florida? How long are you going to be quarantined down there?
So we're quarantined out here for a little bit. We have 5 acres and 2 homes. I know that's like just a backyard to you. You have like 100 or 200 acres, but we're just out here. Luckily, we do have the beach and a pool, but we're staying away from that right now as there's still tons of people there. But yeah, we're good. My son loves it out here. He's got 5 acres to run around, get his feet dirty, and just be a boy. So he's digging it, being away from the city. He thinks we're on a long vacation. So no problems there. As long as my family's happy, I am good. But let's start the show here. Let's get ready to start answering some questions. So I think we're being told here that Diego is going to come in. We're going to spend a few minutes with him, and we're going to see what's kind of going on in his market. So Diego, what's up, buddy? How you doing?
I think we lost Diego there.
Were you able to hear him?
Did you catch? I caught a little bit of what we thought it was going on in the markets. There's a little bit of feedback.
I think we're going to skip over to Andres here. Diego's getting a little bit of feedback. Andres, what do you got, brother? What's going on?
My question is, if my goal is to generate cash flow with the uncertainty of the coronavirus, what do you guys think I should be doing? Because maybe I get a property and the tenants might not pay, or I might not get any tenants.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Ashley, you want to take the lead on that one?
Sure. I think that right now there definitely is an uncertainty if tenants are able to pay their rent. What I would do is, if you're looking for a property right now, maybe look for properties that have tenants in place that are able to pay. Maybe they have, their nurses, doctors in healthcare, or they work at a grocery store. They're part of the essential service. So going in, buying that deal, you have tenants in place. Maybe they have, 6 months left on their lease, and these are essential workers that will be able to pay their rent. I would also look into, hopefully this does not last forever. In New York State, they're doing a 90-day hold on evictions. So maybe you go into the property saying, okay, I have the cash reserves to cover, the expenses for 2 months. And then I will go and I will find a long-term tenant thinking that this will be over. That would be my strategy if you want to buy right now, is to try and look what kind of tenant you're going to get in there or who is already in there, and then make sure you have those cash reserves to pay for a couple months if your tenant is unable to.
Yeah, Andres, one of the things that I would tell you, man, is do a little more due diligence when screening tenants. Definitely do the things that I feel like a lot of times as rookie landlords we forget to do, like actually call their references. On their job, you're allowed to call and see, what their standing is like and stuff. So you can definitely, figure those things out. Doing some due diligence, I think, is going to save you a lot of headaches in this situation. I think a lot of people are going to be looking for places to rent, cheaper rent than they were paying. So I think right now, one of the more crucial things that I'm doing is making sure that I'm screening my tenants properly to make sure that they do still have a job. They are able to pay, rent and that they're in good standing, and definitely be calling their last landlord to see how they treated them. That's really important. Those are things that you are allowed to ask. So that's what I would be doing right now, man.
Great. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Andrea. See you, buddy. That's a big uncertainty right now, Ashley, where people are wondering if their tenants are going to be able to pay, or if they have a vacancy, bringing new tenants in. And I'm just telling everyone that I know, I'm like, man, just do your due diligence as best as possible. You're going to fail to the systems that you have in place. So just create great systems for finding great tenants.
Right. And I think buy and hold has always been kind of a safe strategy compared to flipping in a recession. But this whole thing right here is kind of showing that, it's not always a safe bet. Like when a state puts this, 90-day hold on evictions, and I feel like some ways the media is broadcasting that, it comes across as, oh, you don't have to pay rent for 90 days or whatever it is for your state. And I think that, property managers need to do a really good job explaining to their resident, that doesn't mean you just don't pay and then you're back on pace after 90 days. You will have to make that up. So I've talked to a lot of investors who are working with their tenants to kind of structure something with the residents. So my property management company is doing a tiered program, and owners can opt in or opt out. So like if you pay $600 or less a month, you're getting $100 off your rent for the next 3 months if you pay on time. So it's kind of, a little incentive based to have people pay instead of letting that build up until the end of the 90 days. So I like seeing all the different ways that people are handling this, and there is no right or wrong way at all.
Yeah, no, I got you. Let's bring in here Anna. I think she's got a couple good questions. Anna, how you doing?
Hi, Anna.
Thanks, guys. How are you? Thanks for having me on. My question, which Ashley kind of just went into it right away, is and Felipe, for you, how are you dealing with if people cannot pay rent? Are you giving them some sort of help? I know that in my real estate kind of Facebook group that I have here in Wisconsin, people are giving like 15% off. I mean, people are being really nice. So how are you dealing with that?
One of the things that I'm doing, and I'm stealing this from Brandon Turner and some other, people that I follow, is I'm giving them options to opt into once they call with concerns. So I'm not calling them and saying, hey, I need this, this, and this, and this. But what I don't want to do is make a decision emotionally when they call and not be prepared for the call, right? And I'm talking about my tenants. So once my tenant calls, I give them one or two options. One option that I have is I have a couple of websites from the city in Nashville where I live, where they can go and find resources. So that's one option that I have. Another option that I have is I tell them, why don't we defer one payment over the course of the next amount of your lease? So let's say I have 7 months left on their lease, and let's say their mortgage is $1,000. So we divide that money into the 7 months, and we add that, for the rest of the months, and that alleviates 1 month. We're all human. I'm not going to try to kick someone out during this time. So we have to work together to try to give options. That's the second option. Another option that I give to them is there is resources from the government, like loan payments or things like that they can get, or even at their own bank, maybe they can apply for a loan to pay their mortgage at a really low interest, if not zero. There's a ton of things that are being offered right now for this stuff. Like I said, we're all in this together, but those are some of the options that I'm giving my tenants to make sure that that they're not late on rent. But again, the main answer to that is be prepared because those phone calls may or may not be coming, but you want to make sure that you're not answering them with emotion, but you're answering them with an operating procedure that you've created prior to the issue coming to you.
Yeah, I agree with Felipe on that. Whether there seems to be 50-50, whether people are reaching out now or waiting for their tenants to reach out. But the important thing is that either way, you have a procedure in place as to how you're going to handle it, instead of waiting for them to call and then be like, I don't know. I think it comes off a lot better, and you know that it will work for you. You want to have a procedure in place so you can still make your rent, or your mortgage, you can still pay your property tax, you can still pay your insurance. But I do see a lot of landlords and property managers like my own doing the credit. And then there are some people who I have, at least, that are on Section 8, and pretty much most of their rent is going to be paid for anyways. But I do like the tips you gave, Felipe.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Be proactive. I guess that's pretty much what you guys are saying. So yeah, I'll make sure to relay that. Awesome. Thanks.
Thanks, Anna.
Thanks,
Bye.
Anna.
All right, Ashley, you want to bring in our next guest?
Yeah, let's bring on Connor.
Hey there, Ashley and Felipe.
Hi.
Like you said, my name's Connor. I currently live in Michigan, but I have a rental property in Denver. And my question is, with a tenant moving out, or supposed to be moving out on March 31st, and new tenants supposed to be moving in on April 15th, I'm worried that with all the things going on with coronavirus and shutting down of cities, that they may not be able to move out and move in, leaving me with vacancies. So should I wait to basically get rid of all my savings and buy my next house hack? Or should I, take action on any deal that I think is a good fit that I find here in the next couple months? I want to continue to invest, but I don't want to be stuck with 2 mortgage payments on my own.
Okay. Have you reached out to the tenants moving out and the ones moving in to make sure as of right now, they're both on track to do that?
I have reached out to the tenant that is supposed to be moving out. He isn't the greatest communicator. So I haven't heard if he plans to or not. And then the tenants that are supposed to be moving in, my property manager has, she was the one that found those tenants. Mm-hmm. And I haven't heard one way or another if we are on track or not. But I can find that out likely in the next day or so.
Yeah. And then if they haven't already, make sure they get a hold deposit. But I'm sure, being a property management company, they probably did. So that can kind of help a little bit, if they do back out. But I was talking about this with a friend this morning, actually, and he has someone that's already delayed 2 weeks. They're moving in because of everything that's going on. But I would say look at, so if they don't move in, worst case scenario, 3 months. Do you think it would be vacant 2 months? I would say 3 months, just to be safe. Like, I don't think that, but make sure you have those reserves. And then if you still have extra money, I would go and, yes, buy another property. I'm not as actively looking as I was, but if I get a property emailed to me, I'm still looking for that deal, and if it makes sense. But right now is a very important time to make sure you have reserves for all of your properties.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just add a little bit there, Connor. I think Ashley was spot on. Geez, that was great. One of the things that I would tell you is I heard a little bit about should I keep looking? I would, right? If your numbers still make sense, take emotions out of it. And in that numbers, I mean, you need to make sure that you have, your reserves for every single one of your property. 3 to 4 months is typical. Some people do 6 months, and that's cool too. I do 3 to 4 months reserve for each property. And then I would look at new potential deals as long as they match the numbers. My mentor told me, basically, Felipe, all that's really happening right now is that your numbers are going to be easier to hit because prices are going to be going down. Just he said nothing about emotion, right? He said your numbers are going to be easier to hit as long as you've got, as long as you're not out on the street eating bologna, right? I mean, make sure that for you, your numbers are in place and the deals are going to make sense. Then go for it, right? We all, as investors, we all talk about, I can't wait till the next downturn to, continue to be investing in cheaper properties. And then it happens and people are, freaking out, which I get. But, this is where, I think a lot of the wealth is going to be distributed to people that took action versus people that didn't take action.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you, Connor.
Thanks, Connor. Appreciate it.
Okay, awesome. Let's bring in Dimitri. Hi, how are you?
Hey, guys. How you doing?
You're sideways.
Am I? I'm sorry.
No, you're good. What's going on,
good.
brother?
So I want to get your opinion on something. I have an opportunity to purchase my neighbor's home. It's a 3-family. So I would have to fill 3 vacancies, and that concerns me. I have reserves that'll hold me down for a couple of months. But again, given the current state, I don't know how long this would last. So although I could write it out for a couple of months, at some point it'll start eating into me where I won't be able to do it. So I just wanted to get your take on filling 3 vacancies in today's market. And
how long will it take you to close on the property? How long would you actually need to start?
That's another, getting appraisers, inspectors out right now. That's another issue. They're not in a rush to sell. And again, because it's off market, I could work with them.
Yeah.
Because they do understand the current circumstances.
I don't think this is bad for you. I think you should use this to your advantage in that they're not in a rush to sell. But I would definitely get it under contract, do about a 45-day, 50-day close, whatever they want, the longer the better. But once you have that property in contract, I would start putting it on Realtor, Zillow, Craigslist, Facebook, all across the board, looking for tenants. I would personally go about $50 under market value for rent and just start hitting it every 10 days, dropping it just a little bit. And start weeding out the bad tenants, and really just while you're under contract, I start looking for tenants, so you can start looking at this potential tenancy. And if they're not in a rush, that's actually a good thing, right? Because that's giving you more time to screen tenants and look for potential good ones versus 30-day close, have to get people in there immediately, right? So it gives you a little bit more leverage time. 45, 50 days is great, man. I think that's perfect. I think that's best case scenario, honestly.
Yeah, I think that's better than, you have a 2-week or 30-day closing because of everything that's going on right now. This will kind of delay that out for you. You can start later. Who's your guest with you?
Yeah. Did that answer your question there, Dimitri, though?
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
I would say go for it. Start the process. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Thank you.
No worries. So, yeah, let's bring on, it looks like we have Travis here.
Hey,
What's
Travis.
going on, guys?
What's up,
How
brother?
are you?
How are you doing?
Good.
What question do you have for us today?
Yeah, so everybody, I think, is going through a lot of the same challenges, especially in the short-term market. Felipe and I were able to hang out and talk a little bit about it the other week, but
cool.
it's interesting to see what's going on and what challenges the long-term renters are having versus the long-term landlords are having versus the short-term. Just because travel is so much stopped in the day that we live, and everybody's trying to stay quarantined as much as they possibly can. So I guess I have some thoughts, but kind of y'all's thoughts on, I know, Felipe, you do rent by the room. I'm also doing rent by the room, trying to fill a couple rooms and dropping the rates significantly just to try to push people through. But other kind of creative thoughts and ideas of how to go about listing your properties to be able to get long-term tenants.
Your echo sounds really cool, though. It sounds like you're in.
I'm in the triplex in the empty units.
Oh, I love that. No worries, dude. So one of the things that I've asked my mentors with STR, short-term rental, is, what's the best thing to do right now? And a lot of them are saying not to necessarily switch your whole strategy, but just maybe pivot a little bit. One of the best advice that I've gotten so far has been, if you're in the STR market, maybe go to a LTR, a long-term rental, but more like a 6-month lease if it allow it, because you don't want to be stuck in a 1-year lease when you can go right. Let's say that you're in, Orlando, and you're next to Disney World, and you want to be able to open back up once Disney opens back up. You don't want to be stuck in a 1-year lease, missing out on all the Airbnb action, right? So that's one of the things that I would do, bro. I would probably kind of go for a medium-sized lease. Is that a new word? A medium instead of a short
1 to 3 months. Yep.
Yeah, like a 6-month lease would be good if somebody's willing to take it, and then be about $50 to $100 under market value. I think is bread and butter. I don't think right now is the time to be hoarding or trying to get money from all your tenants or everything. Right now is the time to kind of come together as a team and let's just ride it out. At the end of the day, the 2 most important things are cash flow and paying your mortgage.
I think too that people are going to start getting antsy quarantining in their house. And I think that there are going to be some people that, travel, even if it's an hour car ride, and stay in an Airbnb, for a week or whatever, where they can control the cleanliness, unlike a hotel, and quarantine themselves in there. I have one short-term rental, and we got pretty lucky. We have a family staying in there for the next month and a half because they're doing a major rehab in their house. So they are still coming because they're local and live right in the town. But I have to agree with Felipe. If you switch to long-term, my unit is in an apartment complex, so everything else is a long-term unit there. But that will take some time because, as from one of the previous callers, they're worried about finding a long-term tenant too. Nobody is looking to move right now. So it'll be interesting to see how many people actually do move into new apartments. And if this quarantine does last long, people whose leases are up are probably going to want to get to bigger apartments. They're going to be stuck inside of them. So maybe they will move.
Yeah. So, I've been doing a lot of different things and doing a lot of research, but slashing prices on my Airbnbs has definitely been something that has started getting a lot more views. Exactly like you were saying, Ashley. There's a lot of people out there that can only handle being confined in a home with their family members for so long and need to get out and whatnot. So trying to market my properties in a unique way. One of them has a private pool, so you got everything that you need: Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus. So trying to really show that hey, this will allow you to get out, but slashing the prices to try to attract more people and be able to show that hey, this is a full experience that you're still going to be able to have, even though the parks are closed down right now. You'll still be able to have a good time with the family at the pool and the resort and everything, where my rentals are still open as well. So just continuing to try to find unique ways to try to get some people, if they want to get out of the house, a little getaway.
Dude, say something about recently deep cleaned or something. That's what I'd be looking for in an Airbnb. When was it recently deep cleaned by bleach? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
thanks, Travis. We appreciate it, brother. That's interesting about the Airbnb, how quickly, people that were in that market are getting hammered and stuff. I've heard a lot of people. Yeah. But what's crazy is I was actually texting Travis the other day, and he said that he recently got a really big booking from people that are still traveling. I was kind of man, that's a little scary, but I guess I'm waiting to see what they were traveling for, if that is, because it's not just Disney World. People travel for other stuff. So I guess we'll find out. But all right, let's try to bring in Andrew here. Let's see if Andrew's unmuted and ready to answer up, man. What's going on, Andrew? That water looked good, bro. What's up, bro?
This isn't a chug challenge, Andrew.
No. Still muted. Can't hear you. Sorry, Andrew. He was chugging that water, though. Yeah. He looked thirsty.
It's ready.
But no worries. But yeah, I was saying, the Airbnb thing is really taking a hit. But I feel like if I had reserves for 3 months, I might ride it out. I might try to ride that out. If I wasn't direly needing on that. So what would you do, Ashley? With Airbnb?
Well, with mine, we have that tenant in place, but I would go to long term on it. But my overhead isn't very much on it, since I'm actually just renting the apartment in a complex. I don't have a mortgage payment. Worst comes to worst, I can always terminate my month-to-month lease, I guess. That's the advantage of renting this apartment and then Airbnb-ing. And yes, every time I talk about this, people say, is that even legal? Does the landlord know? And yes, the landlord knows. And
because you just went and told them, right? You just went and told the apartments, hey, I'm in an Airbnb one. Can I rent it out? And they were cool with it, right?
Well, I managed the property for 5 years, so that's why they're okay.
There you go. You have a connection. Yeah. All right, let's bring in Diego here. I think he's ready. What's up, man? Okay. How you doing?
Can you hear me now?
Hey, Diego.
No echo, no nothing. Okay.
You're looking good, bro.
Perfect. My question for you guys, man, and talking about the Airbnbs, that is something that I'm dealing with right now. I have 9. I can share later about that strategy. But the question for you guys is, how are you guys shifting your investment strategies as we go into the downturn here in 2020? Are you guys holding off to cash, or will you guys be actively investing right now?
Good question, Diego.
Yeah.
Go for it,
I'll go first. Okay.
Yeah.
I am hoarding cash, but I usually do that anyways. but a little extra, just because I sleep so much better at night, knowing that I have reserves that I can cover all my bills for an extended amount of time. But I still am actively looking because there are still good deals out there, and I'm hoping that this does not last very long, at least the quarantine period and people out of their jobs. I hope that once in New York State, we're at a 2-week pause period. So I'm hoping once that is over and everyone can go back to work, most people, that we'll be able to get caught up, and there'll be people moving and wanting to get into units. And it takes about 90 days to, if you're lucky, or 45 days to close on a property in New York State. So even if I look now, it would be a long time before I could actually close. So I still am actively looking.
Cool. That's awesome. I got to banter Diego. Diego's a really good friend of mine. I love this guy. Diego, your hair, bro, is so perfect. I'm always so jealous of how amazing your hair looks, dude. I love it.
The same thing to me, Diego. So don't let it go to your head.
Diego's hair, I swear, I've hung out with him. He can go a whole day of selling properties, because he's a realtor in Texas. He can do all these things, and by the end of the day, a long day of work, his hair is like pristine, always. Like, I need to know that secret. Diego, thanks for coming on, brother.
For sure. Thank you, guys.
All right,
okay,
so
we have
Donny,
a Facebook question. Yeah, go ahead, take it.
Yeah, all right. Donny says, where do you see this going in 3 months? I have a chance to buy a distressed home that would take 3 months for a rehab. Deal is $30K, and flip would take $120K. 20 would be 120,000, 20 to 30K in rehab. Good question, Donny. So personally, right now, I wouldn't be doing a flip to sell. If I was going to do a property and the numbers make sense, it would be more of a rental play for me, with the outcome of selling it. So let me explain, and then I'll let Ashley chime in. So me and Ashley did a podcast that's the last one, episode 3. Is that right, Ashley? Because we only have 4.
Yep.
And basically, what we were told was every deal you buy during this time has to make sense for 2 ways. So for this, it could be a good exit strategy to sell since you flipped it, but it has to hold market rent right now. I wouldn't do this to sell it. Personally, I would buy this if the numbers make sense. I mean, they have to really make sense, not like you're trying to finesse the numbers, but they really got to make sense on paper. Take the emotion out of it, then rent it for 6 months to maybe a year, depending, and then flip it on the other side if that's your gameplay. If your gameplay is to flip it, then it has to make sense as a rental and it has to make sense as a flip. So that's what I would do with this. What about you, Ashley?
I wouldn't do a flip right now. Well, I've never done a flip, but I was actually listening to Jay Scott talk on the BiggerPockets episode last week, and about how he has, I think, 3 maybe flips going on right now, or a bunch of them. But he said he's not actively looking to do any more. And I wouldn't either. I don't think that a lot of people are buying right now. Because of what's going on, nobody's moving. They're hoarding their cash, like we just talked about with Diego. And if we are going into a recession, I wouldn't want to be a flipper, especially high end. A lot of people say that, maybe mobile home parks are the way to go right now. You want affordable housing to provide. So I agree with, maybe burring it, turning it into a rental property. And then once you get that tax advantage of owning it as an investment property, and then selling it as a flip later on down the road.
But definitely having an exit strategy. So yeah, I think that's a really good answer. All right, Donny, thanks for the question, man. Love it. Let's go to Sunny, who has a question here. What's going on,
Sunny?
brother?
Hey, how's it going, guys? Congratulations on the new podcast. I've been a huge fan of BiggerPockets for so long. So first of all, to have something for, people that are beginning, that is awesome. Shout out to you guys for that. My question to you guys is more revolving around, for people that are starting out, I'm a person that is looking to save some money, not having the adequate time to kind of run through the numbers. I did come across, companies like Roofstock and Home Union. Just kind of wanted to get some of your own personal feedback on companies like that. The numbers aren't like 12% return or anything like that, but they're decent. For someone who's starting out, what is your thought process on working with companies like that?
Is this a turnkey property?
Yeah.
Yes, they are. I know that BiggerPockets has endorsed them a couple of times on their podcast as well. I don't know if you guys personally use them or.
Yeah, I have not used any company like that. I think it can be an advantage for people who don't have the time. My advice would be to find a partner instead. If what you're lacking is time, find someone who has done deal analysis and has the time to find you a deal and partner that way. I like to have a lot more control over my properties than like if I went and bought from a big entity like this. I feel like it's not as personable as me and a partner, digging into that property and, picking our own managers and stuff like that. I have bought a couple properties that were pretty much turnkey, but I bought them way below value, and it would be a lot more to purchase them from an actual turnkey company. Like you said, you're not getting that big return. But my advice would be to look at if you can find a partner first. If not, just do your research on these companies.
That answers my question. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks, Donny. I was going to tell them to make sure, I was going to sound like a broken record and be like, hey, make sure you're running your numbers. Make sure that you're...
the due diligence.
Do your due diligence, man. I don't care if it's coming from, the best gurus in the world. We all see what's kind of happening with, with everything going on YouTube with some of these huge, big players in the game. I don't care who it's coming from. I'm running my own numbers. I'm running my own due diligence. I'm making sure that the rent is going to hold. And I'm running my numbers more conservatively than before, making sure that I'm not running my numbers at, this is the most I can get for rent, but I'm running my numbers more as this is the least that I'm going to get for rent. And I gotta go based on that.
Be conservative.
Exactly. Not where I can get $1,000 a month on this one. No, the minimum that I can probably get is probably $750 to survive. So I'm going to run my numbers based on that. And anything past that is just, icing on the cake.
Yeah, overinflate my expenses, like property taxes, whatever, they are now, I always inflate because they could be reassessed in 5 years, and I don't want that to affect my cash flow. So
no, exactly. Okay. All right, so let's bring in Louise or Lewis.
It's Louis.
Mr.
Lewis.
Never Mr. Porter. My dad's Mr. Porter. I'm just Louis. My question is more about wholesaling. This weekend, I was sending out letters like you're supposed to. I've never done wholesaling. I've gone to a couple courses and read it and did what they said. And it's actually started working. I got my first call back.
Wow.
I went out there. Yeah, it's really kind of crazy because when you hear about what it is, it doesn't make sense. But when you do it, like, I get it now. It feels different. And I went into a place and the place was definitely, he didn't need me. He had a $900,000 house he wanted to sell on the water, which he thought was beautiful. And I was like, I need some work. And I gave him his number. He came back, that's kind of low. I'm like, yeah, I totally understand. It was a great experience, I must say. I learned more about wholesaling just trying it than actually doing it. And it's also so terrifying because they don't tell you, wholesaling is pretty simple once you get there, but it's that why is there such a mystery around wholesaling? That's my thing. Why is there it's like everybody tells you, but you don't believe them. And then when you do it, you're like, it is exactly like that. It is so much like that.
I think it's because you have to take the action. Like you have to actually talk to people. You have to actually call them. You have to actually go to their house. And I think that's what stops a lot of people from doing those things is because you have to actually do something where if you're looking to, buy a rental property, you can just sit back on your computer and look at rentals and do deal analysis. But for wholesaling, you have to, you did direct mail?
Yeah, I did direct mail. Funny enough, I sent out only 80 letters and I got one response.
A lot of people get caught up too on what should I put in my letter? You can Google a million different samples and there's no right or wrong way, but just write something and send it out. You have to take action on it.
One of the things that you could, or I think the mystery behind, like Ashley said, is people don't take action. And maybe people are so used to being paid, $15 an hour working a year to get $15.50. Or you could do one wholesale deal and make 10 grand. And they're like, that's just not possible. No, that can't happen to me. I'm an average person. And I used to think that way. I'm born in the South. I'm a Hispanic kid. I'm 5'6". I never would have expected to have, 40 plus tenants. Like that just doesn't happen to me. But then I switched my vision to why not me? And that's when it happened, right? And I think that's what you're doing now. It's like, well, why not me? Everyone else can do this. There's plenty to go around. Why not me? So we need to get out of that mentality of, I deserve a 50-cent raise after a year. It's like, no, you deserve a wholesale deal now. Like, let's make that work. I feel like a lot of people maybe just think that it's out of the realm for them and that's for the other people and not for them. And I would challenge you to say, no, like this is for you. You can do this. I don't care if you're a woman, a minority, big, little, short, tall. This is for you and you can do this.
I know when I first got into real estate, I kept saying, I don't want to wholesale. That just sounds like, I don't get that. Who'd want to do that? And now after one deal, I'm like, this is the greatest thing next to sliced bread. I need more of this.
So how did that deal turn out?
It didn't turn out the way I wanted. He rejected my offer, but it was one of those things of, even in the rejection, he was very, very polite. I got a lot of just experience knowing what to look for. I mean, I tell people I took a class in wholesaling for $45, and it was more than worth the money. This is amazing.
And what happened? Okay, he rejected your offer. That was so
horrible. I mean, that's it.
Why did you even try?
And the whole process took, really like 3 days.
Yeah.
So, it's like, hey, okay, great. Didn't work out. All right, bye. On to the next one.
Worst case scenario, you got to see a really nice house. He said no. Best case scenario, you would have made, a bunch of money. So I think that's awesome, dude. Keep crushing it.
Yeah.
This is how bad it is. I've already got my letters ready.
Good. Let's go. Awesome. Keep it up. Yeah, cool. Thank you for calling in.
You got to come back in the Facebook group, on the Rookie Real Estate Facebook group, and come in and post once you get your first one, okay?
I will. Thank you. Thank you so much. You guys are so
All right, brother.
Okay, we're going to go to... I know. I'm excited for him. Okay, so let's bring on Glenn.
What's up? What's going on? I chose the perfect time to go look for my first deal with this whole coronavirus going on. What extra precautions or things to look out for would you give advice when going for my first deal?
I would wear a hazmat suit, a face mask.
I would go covered up to the T. I would go covered up. Is this gonna be for a rental property? Are you gonna?
Yeah, old.
Yeah, I would look at.
I would just run my numbers conservatively.
And look at who your potential tenants are too, and make sure that you're able to find tenants. I have one town right now that we posted a listing, I think Sunday night, and already we have 4 people interested in the property. So it doesn't mean that there's people aren't looking. You just got to know which markets people are looking for. So definitely do your research and be conservative on what you can get for rent. I have another unit that has had no activity on it, and we actually did half off April's rent. If you want to move in, just to try to get someone interested in moving there.
I'm not getting a lot of less interest or anything. If not, I'm getting the same, if not more, amount of interest of tenants. I think it's hitting every city differently. So like we've said a couple times on here, make sure that you're looking at your numbers conservatively, making sure that you're not looking at the top of the market like we used to. Like, I can get this much in rent. Look at what's the least that you can get and run your numbers based on that, and then make offers based on that as well. But what was your second question, Glenn?
So, Ashley, we spoke a little bit on Instagram Messenger, I think a couple of weeks ago, or about a month and a half ago, after I heard your episode saying that you encouraged my wife to be a property manager for our property. Yeah, so now I wanted to ask you, what advice would you give her in terms of studying and learning and for becoming a property manager?
Good question.
Well, first of all, it's definitely Brandon Turner's book on rental property investing. Has she read that? Do you know? It's a BiggerPockets book.
He's on the first one, the rental property book, but not the managing one yet.
Both of those are really great, but also have her stick to the lease. Think about as many possible things as you can to put into the lease for scenarios that might come up, because it's going to be hard to be the bad guy when issues come up. And this way you can blame everything on the lease. Like, I'm sorry that, this happened, but in the lease it says this is how we take care of that situation. You signed the lease. I signed the lease. I can't go against the lease. We both signed it. So that's my advice I would give. Felipe, you can probably give good advice. You manage your own properties too for a new property manager.
I think I always use the excuse I got to talk to my partner when I don't like the answer. But that gives me 24 hours to touch base on a certain situation. So use those little things to your advantage. Don't ever give an answer based on emotion. I think that is the biggest thing. I think people overpromise when they're happy and then underdeliver when they're sad. So don't give a answer within 24 hours unless it's an emergency, and fall to your operating procedures. You should never give an answer, period. The answer should always be searchable, and that's going to get you away from being sued. The answer needs to be on paper on your website somewhere. So I think that's going to be my biggest advice, is don't give an answer based on emotion. And then second, don't give an answer at all. Make sure it's on paper somewhere where you can tell them, hey, you can actually find that answer on our website. And if it's a new question, answer it strategically within the 24 hours and then create an SOP for that question, because I guarantee you someone else is going to have that.
Yeah, even if when I first started out, I wrote a rules list and it just was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it just had if there's a lockout, that's, a $20 fee. And just, it was a whole list of different scenarios and rules of what you could and couldn't do and what would happen if you did it. So.
Man, Ashley, if I had to sign a lease with you, God, I feel like I wouldn't read it. I'd be like, oh my gosh, there's so much stuff. You probably have the best tenants, though. That's awesome. All right, Glenn, thanks, buddy. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah. Tell your wife good luck, and we're rooting for her.
Thanks, brother. All right.
Okay,
so
next we
bring in our
have
next guest,
Sarah.
Ashley.
Sarah, we know you.
Sarah.
This is super embarrassing because I realized I'm literally wearing the shirt that I wore when I met Felipe. Like,
Do you change, Sarah? Did you change? Or I feel like she hasn't changed.
saved for like 2 weeks apparently.
She's taking the quarantine thing serious.
So we know Sarah from Instagram, and they made me super jealous. And Sarah was in Nashville, and you guys got to hang out. But
She wears the same shirt, guys, all the time. She's still got the taco stain where we went to go eat. No, go ahead, Sarah. What's your question?
So I know everyone's freaking out about the economy and things right now. Have you thought about like the classes of properties you have? I don't know if Ashley and I have ever even talked about this because, we have like B and C class. And so I thought that would be something kind of fun to discuss, is thinking about your own properties and how you feel if they're going to be like recession proof or not, because I know some people with A class properties are really worried about that right now. So I was going to kind of pick your brains on how you're feeling about your portfolio.
That's a great question. A lot of mine are C's and B's too. I have several that are like a higher B, almost an A, low A. But
low A.
Those are in a great location, and I'm not really worried about them. I would be worried if I had luxury apartments. I used to manage patio homes, brand new patio homes, and I do have a little concern for those. It is the highest rent in the whole town. They're beautiful, but they are a lot of almost every unit is filled by a retired person. With the stock market going down, I'm assuming that most of their retirements accounts have gone down, and it depends, what their their retirement is, their financial position. But I do have that fear that some of them won't be able to make those high rent payments anymore because their retirement has dropped so much that they might not want to renew another year paying that much out of pocket.
Yeah, great question. For me, I love where I stand. I've always kind of known that I wasn't ever going to buy a rental property that was like Class A type style, because I knew that was the top of the market. But I also wasn't going to buy like your D's, like way C+, you're way down there. I was always, when I was mentored during this, a lot of people that know my story from episode 329 on the BiggerPockets episode, I always decided to rent to like construction workers, food service people, very middle class, struggling to stay in the middle class tenants, because for me, I've always felt those have been the best tenants. I didn't want nagging tenants way up top, and I didn't want people that weren't going to be paying their rent. I wanted people that were going to appreciate the property. So the only thing that's really happening to me is now I'm getting B plus tenants that want to pay cheaper prices coming to ask for me, if that makes sense. So I'm getting like better tenants because they want the cheaper rent, versus like losing. And then my tenants are really wanting to stick around because they don't want to drop to, the lower class tenants. Not lower class, but lower individualized, they want to make sure that the properties are where they want. People don't want to live, they want to keep their source or the way that they're living now. So for me personally, I've always just stuck to the middle. My mentor told me always, Felipe, shoot for the target money. And target like is in the store. So like you want people that are the managers of Target renting from you. You don't want, the C-suite people at Target. You want the managers, the guys that are making $50,000, $60,000 a year, who if they had to, they could drop down to an hourly rate, but still be able to afford your rent. Or for example, right now also, if I'm going to buy a property, it has to match two things. A flip, it has to be able to sell and rent, or it has to meet two criteria. But I say the same thing with my tenants. I would want tenants that meet two criteria. Either they can be A and B class tenants, but definitely not like the super low rents neither. So I try to make sure that my tenants would be able to afford both if I could. And dropping my rents just a little bit isn't going to hurt. So that's going to help my tenants as a whole.
I think right now, too, what's going on with coronavirus and people having to stay quarantined and be at home, that it's a lot easier for white collar workers to work remotely. And if you go on, any kind of social media, that's what you see, all the great memes and everything of all these white collar workers that can work remotely. But then it's all, the lower middle class, that is getting laid off because they can't do, their waitress job remotely, or luckily retail for grocery stores is still available. But if you worked at a clothing store, you're laid off right now. So I think it's very different, because when I think of like the 2008 recession, and I don't know a lot about it, I watched my favorite movie, The Big Short, but I think of corporate America getting people laid off from there. And this it'll be interesting to see if a recession does play out or not. But right now, in our area at least, we're only seeing those people who can't work remotely that are getting laid off, and that's the restaurant workers, retail, or anyone that can't do their job from a computer, I guess.
Hope that answered your question, Sarah. We'll see you at National again.
Bye, Sarah.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right, so I think we're bringing in Kes next. Let's see what question he has. What's going on, man?
Hey, guys. How you doing? Ashley.
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. I am a new investor and been house hacking for the past 5 years. Had no idea what it was called since I started listening to BiggerPockets earlier this year, when my wife and I, we recently got interested or wanted to take control of our future, basically, and started seeking knowledge on investing and things like that. Some of the information that I have, it was more of an acquisition question. Do you guys think this is a great time, or maybe in the near future, to do more creative financing? Prices might drop, or people are scared of their homes losing value and stuff. And so let's say using lease option to lock in the price now with certain contingencies in there, saying, well, if it drops more than $50,000, then I get to walk, certain exit clause. Just your opinion on using creative financing in a time like this. Of course, still having the right reserves. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a really great question. Yeah. Go ahead, Felipe.
Sorry, Ashley. Yeah, sorry about that. I think creative financing is really smart right now, because you are able to set the terms more in your place, whereas in even just like 2 months ago, they were putting out double-digit interest rates and things like that. So I think right now, creative financing, hard money, finding money outside of the banks is going to be really important. And if you can get the right terms, like you said, if the value drops a certain amount, I want out. Like, I think you got to remember, these people make money by letting you borrow money. So use that to your advantage. And I personally would use it, but I would be very specific on my exit clause, maybe even have a shotgun clause of like 20% drop, I'm out, no questions asked. So just have, those criterias in place. And then to answer
how you're going to measure that. Like,
exactly.
How are you going to measure that? Is it going to have an appraisal done or what? Yeah.
You have to definitely define every single thing that you're going to be doing, almost like an outline, right? Like, have the clause, and then this is how it's going to all play out. And if it plays out like this, I can get out, no questions asked.
The only thing I would add to that is I would be worried about doing a balloon payment anytime within the next year. That's something I would stay away from, as I wouldn't do, like interest-only payments or something for 6 months and then the total balance due. So balloon payment, maybe even like the next year and a half, is something I wouldn't want to do with creative financing.
Gotcha.
Yeah, well, thanks, you for calling in. When he was talking about house hacking, it made me think that I've been just like what's happening with, renters not being able to pay rent, people not wanting to flip houses. Now might be the time to get into that house hacking. If you can pay the mortgage on your own without having, tenants live by the room or in the other unit. And then if you do have them, it's just, the cherry on top if you do have them. But I would say, do you agree that house hacking might be a safe strategy for a new investor? I mean, it's always been my favorite to get started, but during what's going on right now, do you think that right now would be good to house hack? If you have your reserves, you could afford the mortgage payment on your own, but why not try and get tenants in place, if you can?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's the only option that I would be doing right now. I wouldn't be doing Airbnb. I wouldn't be doing flipping. I wouldn't be doing any high-end stuff. I wouldn't be doing any creative stuff even right now, because the market is too up and down and wishy-washy. Right now, I would be doing rent by the room, house hacking my way through. I can still buy properties, but they would be a strategic play on my first option would be, can I rent this by the room? Will it hold the mortgage? And can I make cash flow off of it? That's definitely what I would be doing right now, as well as making sure that my tenants are more like really digging into their lease and how they answered the questions, and calling the people that they wrote down as references, calling their jobs to make sure everything is good. I would actually be doing those things. I know a lot of landlords have those options, but I don't know if they actually do it sometimes or not. So I think personally I would be really digging into the tenants and making sure the cash flow works based on rent by the room.
Well, I'm glad you agree with me for once.
I always agree with you. Well, no, not always. That's a lie. No.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us on this live today. We had so much fun taking callers. We'll have to do another one soon. And maybe I got really excited with the guy who was wholesaling. So maybe we'll have to do one with people who are just getting in and doing their first deal.
Yeah, his was great. I really hope that he posts in the Facebook group, the Rookie Real Estate Facebook group. If you haven't joined, go ahead and follow us there. We'll have a link up to it on the real estate show here on BiggerPockets as well. So just make sure that you come in, leave your questions, your comments. We're a network of just rookies that just want to make sure that we can help each other out. And especially the question about wholesaling, I thought that was pretty sweet. Yeah.
And you can find our show notes at biggerpockets.com/rookie4. And thank you for joining us.
Thanks everyone. We'll see you guys later.